Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the NH Experience. And on today's show, I have a very delightful and incredible special guest. She is a psychology expert. She's a renowned life coach. She's the president of NAACP chapter, one of them here in Los Angeles in the Southern California area. She's also the founder of the Dr. Bryant Foundation. We'll get into that and more. And also, she is a graduate of Cal State University Northridge. She has
Atta
two
girl.
degrees, y'all. This is how great she is. She has two degrees, one in psychology, the other in Pan-African Studies. Please help me welcome the one and only Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. How you doing?
I'm doing so good, and I'm excited to be on your show. I'm grateful. I know we've crossed paths before, and finally, I'm able to be on here and get some synergy going and some dialogue going. So I'm excited. Thank you for having
Well,
me on, Nick.
you know what? Thanks for coming on, Dr. Bryant. I really appreciate it. I was telling you earlier, I feel like I know you even without really knowing you, just because I feel like we cross paths with social media and things of that nature. Your spirit, your energy is always, beautiful and energetic and positive. Um, just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your journey. How did you become Dr. Bryant? What was it like growing up for you? And at what point did you feel like mental health awareness was your lane as far as the path that you chose? Because you did it way before it was popular now.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. I've been in this field for about 13 years now. So I did it when it was the field not to get into because, there's no money there. It's one of the biggest fields of service. The minority folks who look like us weren't receiving the proper diagnosis. They were either being overdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, but the point is not properly treated. And
Hmm.
so I got into it when it wasn't as popular. Now, thank God, it is popular. Not thank God because us, mental health professionals and life coaches are able to make money. That's not the big woo. It's more of we have people in communities like the Black and Brown community who
Hmm.
were never, counseling, therapy, life coaching prone, but were the ones with the most healthcare disparities and needed a lot of the treatment. Now coming to therapy, open arm without the stigma that you're weak if you do it, or go to the church and go to the pastors, and that's where we were getting our treatment from the Black and Brown community. And I'm not opposed to that. I think that prayer is the power. It is. But,
Hmm.
faith without works is dead, and prayer without works and without the self work is just that. It's just a prayer, just something that you're speaking out like an affirmation that never manifests unless you're doing the work that puts you in alignment with manifesting that at what you're asking for. Because this is not just prayer. Every thought and every word is a prayer. You're speaking life and death into everything. So that is your prayer. And so, I got into it a while ago. But what really got me into this field, because first, initially, I was thinking about going to law school. And I thought, you know what? I want a family at some point, and I want to be able to create a world where I am accessible to my husband, to my kids, and I'm able to have more of a flexible schedule, and you know, not come and go as I please, but schedule things where I can be of service to my folks that I am serving from the professional capacity, but be of service to my folks that are in my personal capacity, which will be, a priority when I start to become a mama bear. But then I said, well, I can't do that in the field of law. And something happened at that point, though, Nick, is where
Hmm.
God put me into my own healing journey. And I started to work with Iana Van Zant. I think she has a big show on Oprah. She became one of my life coaches and someone who really helped me start my healing journey. I went out to a lot of her workshops and her Wonder Woman week healing seminars, and it was life changing for me. And within those workshops, I got to see a lot of me that was in pieces. And when I learned to bring my broken pieces and make peace from it, it
Hmm.
was one of the most freeing, liberating places. And now I'm at the benefit of being able to be in what I call God's peace within myself because I healed so many of my pain pockets that I wasn't even aware of. And so when I got to that space, I'm going, oh my God, like, I got to be able to give this to everybody who I can, because people don't have to be broken. People don't have to be depressed. They don't have to be in anxiety. They don't have to be in this space of turmoil. It's all something that, we are creating as we become adults. Of course, when we're kids, we don't have the insight. We don't have the choice making power to say, hey, I don't want to do this and I don't want to learn this. So things become learned behavior. But then as we go from little kiddos to grown kiddos, because that's all we do is transpire into grown kids, we forget that we have the power of choice to say, hey, I'm not going to live by that or doing that anymore. And those behaviors don't serve me as a 30-year-old woman or as a 25-year-old young man. I can't do those things that I was taught in the household. And if you really look at the majority of households from the minority community, folks are growing up surviving, not thriving in their household. So we learn to survive, and then we become grown adults who are still surviving in this world. When it says it in Jeremiah in the Bible. It says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, plans to give you a future. That's God's word speaking to us, meaning you are not meant to survive. You are meant to thrive. That is a human right, that we receive all that we want. Again, the Bible says, be anxious for nothing. Make your requests be known to God.
But no, you do. And the one thing I will say with that is that I remember something TD Jakes said about when he was counseling men. And I always recommend this book. It's called Emotions. And he said, we're taught what men do, but we're not taught what men are. And, that resonated with me. And then what you just said just now, just far as being broken and trying to heal yourself and be whole again. What were some of the pivotal points when you found that you were broken, and what point did you realize, okay, I can do better than where I currently am?
Totally. Some oftentimes, not just with myself, but with humans in general, we come face to face with ourselves when we are in relationships. And that can be romantic relationship, business relationship, but usually it's the relationships that do have love involved, because love is the most changing mechanism that shows us who we are, because it gets our attention, because it's one of the strongest emotions. And so me being in a relationship, for the most part, in my very first engagement, I've been engaged twice, and so I called off 2 weddings. But when I was engaged to my first fiance,
Mhm.
I was so abusive to him, physically and verbally. And this was learned behavior. And I was doing it subconsciously, unintentionally, doing it from a place of, this is how you react, not respond, react. And this is how you treat, a person who does something that doesn't fit within your expectation, within your scope, within your ideology. Or, this is the punishment that they get. They get this punishment that tells them that they are bad and that they are these things. And it turned from the verbal to a physical, abusive relationship. And I was engaged to a guy who wasn't even hostile, who
Mhm.
himself was not an abuser. He didn't come from an abusive household. His parents were married since they were 14 for like 30, 40 years by the time I got with him.
Mhm.
It's really important, Nick, that I tell this story like this, because oftentimes the man is looked at as the abuser. And I'm not saying that he's not the abuser some of the time or a majority of the time, but there's this lack of accountability that I have experienced from the side of women being the abuser, women being the ones who are verbally emasculating, right? Or physically even doing it, because of what you said, Bishop Jake said. We tend to treat men as we are taught that they are, or whatever you said, but not who they really are, something of that sort. And I'm saying this to say, when I got into that relationship, the last time, which I think was like year number 3, that I actually became physically abusive with him, I caught myself. And it was like this aha pivotal moment where I'm like, what the am I doing? Like, where did this come from? Who is this person? Like, I love this guy. What am I? This guy does not hit me, does not abuse me. He respects me. This man loves me. What am I doing? And in that
Mhm.
what am I doing moment, obviously I spoke that into the universe, and the universe spoke back and said, you're doing everything that you were taught. You're doing everything that is outside of who you are. Your pain, your trauma is speaking and acting for you, not your love and not your authentic self. you have to be able to separate the two by having awareness of what that looks like. So I learned in that moment, Nick, that pain and trauma looked on me as hostility and anger and abuse, as it often does on majority of people in general. That's what pain and trauma shows up as. I'm angry, I'm hostile, and I'm abusive. Why? Because that's what I feel in here. And we only give who we are. We produce who we are in every relationship and experience we have in life. And so in that relationship, I was producing myself in that experience. And that last time I told him I would never, ever again in my life, ever put my hands on you ever again in my life. And I never did from that day. But that really caused me to look into myself. And what was really magical is um, he facilitated me through all of that. He never once said, I'm leaving you. I don't want to be with you. Go get help. You're crazy. What's wrong? He just said, I love you. And this doesn't feel good. And I know it's not right, but we're going to process this together. And so there's two pieces, me taking accountability and saying, yo, what's going on? And him loving me through it and meeting me where I was and allowing me the room to screw up, understand what I'm doing, and then process what I need to be healed in and at. And that's the power in it, to give him credit as well. Because I always say, just because a breakup happened or because a woman leaves a man or vice versa, doesn't mean that that wasn't a good man. It could mean that that man, we either outgrew each other or the conduciveness or compatibility wasn't there, and things kind of just take their course. Great guy, was a buffer for my issues, was a buffer for my healing journey. And then it got to a place where obviously he was seasonal. He was there for that. And the relationship came to its demise. And then my healing journey just never stopped, and it will never stop, ever.
No, that's a fantastic story, because in these days and times, you don't hear women, first of all, talking about that, because we always talk about the abuser usually being the man or the person in the relationship. But there are some women out there that are physically abusive to their significant others. But the fact that you were able to talk about it, and I'm sure that information really healed some women, I'm sure, across the journey. And you talked about a learned behavior. What was your childhood like, growing up? What was it like for you, and how did you get to that point?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I had a really interesting childhood because I'm the oldest of six. I'm the first grandchild of I don't know how many grandkids, it's so many. And so I say all that to say I came into the world treated from the family as like the golden child, the the princess, the baby, the oh my god, all those good things.
Hmm.
My parents were teenage parents, and so they had me at 16 and 17, which means they needed a lot of help from grandparents and aunties. So I was the kid who really was the epitome of it took a village, and even if it didn't take a village, I had a village. So I grew up with a lot of support, a lot of love. I was doted on a lot. I was empowered a lot by family. Still to this day, I'm 38, and my between my mom and my dad, I don't know, and my grandmother, I don't know which ones empower me, stroke my ego the most, even at this age. And it's one of the most amazing feelings. They celebrate me so much. But with my parents being teenage parents, there were a lot of things that I had to figure out on my own. There's a lot of things I had to go to the board and draw out plays on my own and figure out blueprints of how do I do this and how do I apply for college. I was the first generation to go to college. I'm the first one to get a doctorate degree, and so all those figuring it out on my own stuff, which creates adversity, I'm grateful for. Even in the moments, I say, in the cracks and crevices of in the trenches of figuring it out and feeling like, why don't I have someone ahead of me that I can look at and say, oh, that's how you do it, oh, that's who I want to be like. It allowed me to be that person for my siblings, and
Hmm.
it allowed me to be that person for my cousins and my younger generation of family and friends. And believe it or not, I'm that person for a lot of my aunts and folks who are of age to me. um, the person who they look at in admiration. And so again, like the Bible says, me and my Bible quotes, I should be like my next thing should be preaching. I'm gonna be the next female Bishop Jakes. But it was good for me that I was afflicted because it
Hmm.
gave me strength to pull from that folks who haven't been through anything just don't have. And so I have the depth and the capacity, especially in my field of being a life coach, to provide coaching from a place of been there, done that, and from a place of compassion and empathy, and not just from having a book of skilled and training because of all my education. So I think my clients see it, and I self-disclose sometimes with them to let them know I'm human. There's things that I've done, and this didn't happen overnight. And you can't Google success. You can only experience it. You can only experience it. And that's something that I'm grateful that God made it to where my world pushed me to have to experience things that didn't always look like good. But again, like the Bible says, what looks like bad is always made for good. And the universe is always conspiring to work for you and not against you. When you know those principles and your belief is what is where your blessings are measured by. And so, abundance will always pour in.
I'm gonna give you an offering before we get off this show, because you over here preaching, you over here touching some lives out here right now. You talk so much about, you were the first one in your family to go to college, and then the first one obviously graduate college and have 2 degrees, which is not easy. It's hard enough getting. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, 4. Let me not shortchange you. I don't want no smoke. Let me not shortchange you. You have 4 degrees, but I mean that is something that is astonishing. And when you look at today's society, everything that you're doing, you're a life coach. You talked about, connecting with Ayanna Van Zandt and then so many others. What were those experiences like for you? And then at what point did you realize, okay, it's time for me to leave the nest and it's time for me to venture out on my own?
Yeah, great question. I started off as a marriage, family, and child therapist when I had my master's before I obtained my doctorate degree and transitioned into a life coach. And it's funny because when I first started to provide therapy to MFT, I told God loud and clear, I said, I don't want to treat folks from the inner city and in the hood that came from places that I came from that are going to be court ordered, and they're going to have because it's going to be heavy on my heart. It's just going to be a lot for me. And I'm not sure if I can keep my biases and my judgment in check. Because I was in my early 20s at that time. And I just felt like if a mother comes in my office and, she's under the substance and she's already had 3 kids taken from her and she's still doing the drug that these other kids got taken. I'm not sure if I have it in me to sit there and say, tell me more. I might tell her a few things. And I just know my personality. And so at that moment, I knew that coaching was better for me because I can be more hands-on, 1. But 2, God did exactly that at which I asked him not to do. He put me dead in South Central off of Slauson and Hawdale, a block away from Slauson Swap Meet, at a nonprofit organization where all we dealt with were reunified families, court-ordered kids, DCFS children who were just, in situations that just so heartbreaking. I remember one young girl, her mom used to post up things on the internet, and guys would pay her mom, and she was 13 at the time. They would pay her mother to come over and have their way with her. And the last time that they did this, one of the intruders, or the pedophilers, he put her on the burners, the stove burners, turned it on and had his way with her. And when I first started seeing her, she would be telling her story, and I would be, wanting to support her in more of a nurturing, supportive way. And she would always say, don't touch me, don't touch me. Okay, please don't touch me. Well, obviously, that's a trigger for her. And so a few months went by, and we were getting ready to terminate her therapy because the court order was over and, transition had happened and evolution. And she said, Dr. Bryant, I'm ready for that hug. And so in that moment, obviously that's a breakthrough. And so stories like that in my mind, before being in that area, in that field, in that industry, I just thought in my mind, I thought, like, I don't want to have to be in that space. It's trauma for her, but it's traumatizing for the therapist on this end. There was a lot of debriefing I had to do with my therapy colleagues, but God knew my heart. He knew the depth that he built in me. He knew the capacity that I had for me to be in that space. And he knew, obviously, nobody better than me that can provide that treatment for these youth and these kids who were in that space. And so went from from that to life coaching, and now I do see adolescents and kids and adults and families in all the same way. My modality is just a hybrid where, because I come from the mental health therapy treatment world, I implement a psychodynamic and CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy approach, alongside life coaching tips and tools, which gives people a hybrid. So I'm working through stuff, which is the therapy piece of it, working through stuff, going in the back, seeing how your childhood relates to now and what's learned behavior and how we can shift it. Let's keep what works. Let's throw away what doesn't. And then the coaching is, where do you want to go from today? So let's work on that. But yeah, it's been an interesting, very interesting road, and I'm just grateful that the things that I asked not to happen, God knowing my better good, put me in those positions, and I was able to save lives. I've had kids who are adolescent teenagers come in and they're suicidal, and I've been able to say everybody out the room. It's just me and him. And that same kid, 2 years later, I'm winning the Woman of the Year from our assemblyman. And they say my name. And as they say my name, I get a text message. And of course, I go to my text before getting up to get my award. And I look, and it's him. And he sends me a picture of him and the teacher or principal. And he says, "Look, Dr. Bryant, I made it." And so in that moment, I'm like, oh, so I'm in tears because I'm reading this text. Of course, the audience thinking I'm in tears because I'm winning this Woman of the Year. And I'm grateful for the accolade of Woman of the Year, but I can care less about that in this moment, because what's priceless is a kid whose life I saved, who was on the bridge of committing suicide, is now has graduated from high school and is on his way to college. And that exact same kid, about maybe 5 to 7 years after he graduated from college, which is just this year, he was the co-organizer with me of our NAACP Unity March, where we partnered with the LAPD to march for the racial disparities and discrimination and justice. And so this is a kid who is now a community leader, and just think, had he not gotten that help, we would have had one less community leader. And this dude is
Right.
impactful in his community. He is needed. And so, those are moments where you got to show up and you got to show out. And commitment is not a feeling. It's doing what you said you would do, regardless of how you feel. And that's what leadership is. And I always say leadership, we have an unspoken oath. When you go to get your law bar exam, they give you a verbal oath. When you go to be a medical doctor, there's a verbal oath. But community leadership, there's a nonverbal oath that says that I want to put myself on the line, the front line. And if that's sacrificing who I am or what I look like or my image or whatever else comes with it, at the expense of saving, even if it's just one life in my community leader, journey, then that's legacy, and I've done my job. And so that's the magic in helping people and doing what I do. And I always say, when you find self, there goes your purpose. People always say, "What's my purpose, Dr. Bryant?" Well, you don't know your purpose, you don't know yourself. And I found myself on my healing journey. I found more of myself on my healing journey, which brought me to where I'm at now, which is healed people heal people, and hurt people hurt people. And here I am, a healed woman who's not perfect by far. And I don't want to be perfect. It's way too much pressure. But here I am, a healed woman, healing other people in their journey, because I've been afflicted and I understand what it feels like to be dark. I understand what it feels like to have your candle light blown out, and understand what it feels like to be empowered and now have light and God's peace and be solid in a sturdy oak and be in the world and not of the world, which makes a huge difference in someone's world, their life, and the trajectory of where they're going.
Absolutely. The first time I remember seeing you was on television, and you were part of the NAACP organization. There was I believe, some racial situations going on at Palos Verdes High. Yourself and a few other activists came out and discussed the situation. Can you talk a little bit about that, and what happened with that situation, and how that continued to propel you to want to work with the NAACP chapter here in Los Angeles?
Absolutely. It was myself and my VP and co-founder of our branch, Joe Gatlin, which also happens to be my cousin. PV had this. First of all, this is not their first time that Palos Verdes has had a racial incident. And where they went wrong was they called the kid, asked the girl to go to prom, had a post poster that said, will you go to prom with me? Nigger, will you go to prom with me? And the school downplayed it and called that a racial slur, which is not a racial slur. That should be legally. It's not. We're working on that by writing legislation. It should be considered a hate crime, because if you were to call somebody in the LGBTQ plus community, which I love, my best friend is an LGBTQ. She has a wife.
Absolutely.
Okay. I believe in obviously equal justice and equality across. But my point is, if you call them something derogatory, it is a hate crime. But you call somebody who is black a nigger and it's not a hate crime, it's a slur. It's not a slur. It didn't sit right with me. So we go up to the school, and the principal, funny story, principal says he's busy and he's going from class to class, and he can't meet with us at that time. So I said, okay, no problem. You can't meet with us now, then we'll meet with media. We'll let media know you don't want to address us. You're calling this a racial slur. You're downplaying something. You're in a predominantly white school. I don't care if there's 0.3%, which you can't have that. So let me say 1% black folks in there. That 1% black person needs to be protected and served the same way that 99% is as well. They're also part of the student body. We're not having it. As soon as we went out to media, I think maybe 4 minutes after getting into my car, he's calling and calling. Well, I press voicemail. Conversation's over. We're already done now. He leaves a message. We want to meet up with you. We apologize. I guess he didn't know it was NAACP that was up there saying, we're here to de-arm and defuse. We're not here to punish you or to go to war with you. We're here to de-arm and defuse and be a part of the solution. That's what we do. But you weren't open to that. So long story short, we ended up going back up to the school to meet with this guy. And by then, they had to put the school on lockdown because the people had seen our interview on the news and heard, wait a minute, this principal won't even come and address the NAACP. He's calling this a racial slur. Well, he had death threats at this time. He had emails full of death threats, and they had to shut the school down because people are not playing that racial injustice anymore. They're just not going for it. And so we're in his office, and it gets so funny. This principal is a big old corn-fed white dude. I'm serious. So we're in his office, and I say to my VP, I said, this guy, I said, he's a big old corn-fed white dude. I said, I bet he can care less about the racism and the racial injustice that's going on up in his school. This is terrible. And I'm just ripping him to shreds because now I'm just upset that this is going on, and he's not, in my mind, he's not taking any charge, and he's a big white corn-fed white dude. I'm going, we get there, we sit down, I look behind him, I see a beautiful picture of, I think it was 3 or 4 beautiful black kids. And I said, excuse me, sidebar. I said, whose kids are those? He said, oh, those are my kids. I said, oh, you have a black family? He said, yeah. He said, yeah, my wife is black. I said, I got to be transparent. I told him, I said, I thought you was just this really big corn-fed white dude who could care less about the racism that's going on in his school. I'm always transparent. I believe I practice what I preach.
You got to be.
And he laughed at me, and I said, why didn't you say you had a black family? And he said, I didn't want to use that. And then it even looks more like I'm using an excuse or white privilege. I said, oh my God. I said, man, listen, you have to address the media, man. You can't hide in your office. We let's walk out there together after we discuss solutions and see how we can be involved with this. Walk out there together, address the media. Even if we address them, you stand with us, because we want to be able to bring in some type of justice in this school, particularly to the kiddos that this happened to in the black student body, and not just black, the colored student body that's here. Because there was, when we went to the school, you'd be surprised. It was a few young Asian girls who said, "Oh my God, NAACP, Dr. Brown, we're so happy you're here. This discrimination has been going on for so long." And so Asians are people of color. We got so many people of color. Moving forward, they agreed to do a unity and anti-racism training. And then when we got to the part of implementing the training, after we did meeting after meeting after meeting and budget after budget, their superintendent says, oh, we're going to go through our insurance and we're going to choose someone through our insurance, which really meant, Nick, that they're going to choose someone who they know to come in and implement that training, who they're going to pay, who obviously is probably going to give them a kickback. And this is part of the systemic racism that happens. That's a part of systemic racism, where you have it to where you want to go outside of your community leaders who look like the people who are being discriminated against to pay folks who don't look like us to give you training. And that's what keeps it systemic, because they keep it going internally, and it's just not okay. But we end up getting to the bottom of the issue. But the part that would have been more long term, which was the training, is where the school did that systemic thing. And now, we're in the talks of saying what we could do about that, if there can be a lawsuit, if, what we can do in particular as far as them keeping it in-house, which obviously is not okay. That's the whole point, of us going up there.
How do you balance your personal with business and still find time for yourself mentally to kind of recharge and regroup?
Oh, that's so good, because we talked about that as a priority today with the LAPD recruit, self-care being number one. The very first thing, Nick, that I tell all of my clients, and even, when I'm doing my speaking events, is the way that you live a balanced life is you find what you love. Remember I said, find yourself and there's your purpose. Find what you love. That's not predicated on your mom, your dad, your wife, your girlfriend, your husband, your kid. What you love at this point, be very, very, very selfish in what you love, and put a price on it, and then find as many people to pay for it. Because if you're doing what you love and getting paid for it, then you're almost always on vacation. Of course, it's going to feel like work sometimes, because me being in the purpose of doing what I love, I almost never feel like I'm working. The only time I feel like I'm working is if I'm doing the what I love all the time, and there's no balance of, like you said, me hopping on my private jet and getting out of here. But the balance of that is, I tell my clients this all the time as well, and I do this. I have a what I want to do list. I have a what I need to do and what I want to do, and I make sure I'm implementing minimum of 2 to 3 of what I want to do on my list in my daily life every day. So it becomes a lifestyle, not on the weekends. I'm not waiting Monday to Friday for Friday to come. And no, there's been times, like you've seen, where if in the middle of the week I have no clients, or I've scheduled my clients around so that I can have that Wednesday. I just woke up Monday morning, or I might have woke up Tuesday, and I rescheduled my clients around. Wednesday, I want to hop on a private jet to go to San Francisco to get my nails and toes, and or just go to lunch just for the day and come back. Guess what? I'm doing it because there's no price on your happiness. And if you don't recharge, and if you don't tap in, tune in, and turn on yourself, you won't be of any service to anybody else. You will deplete, you will drain yourself, and you will be in what is called a burnout. And that's when you are doing work that you're not really in love with. And so you're just there. And then you're trying to use days where you are, doing the I want to do list, and you really aren't there, because your life is out of balance. And the other thing is, when I am on my jet in Vegas or on a vacation or wherever the heck I'm going, I'm present. I'm there. I'm not, but I make a mistake sometimes. I'm not going to even lie, where I do commingle work. If one of my clients texts me and I'm, in Vegas or we're poolside, but see, this goes back to, because I love what I do, I love to respond, or I'm making sure I'm setting the new date, or I'm saying, hey, you got this, bud. Remember what your coping skills are. Hold on, wait a minute. Is that what happened? Remember what we talked about in the session. Make sure you're doing your breathing, technique, whatever it is. I love what I do. So when I'm doing that on my self-care days, it doesn't feel like work. And so I think what's most important for balance is, like you, I'm sure that you love your show and you love doing this. You love interviewing people. Like, this is what you do. If you get into who you are and you do that, when are you ever outside of who you are? When are you ever outside of your power? When are you ever outside of this feels good?
Two things really quickly before I let you go. We all know COVID-19 has been devastating on so many of us, whether it's personally, work-wise. A lot of people have lost their jobs. Some small businesses won't be able to recover. There's about 40 plus million people unemployed right now. We're going through social injustice with racism and inequality and bigotry and things of that nature. And then also we're in the midst of a presidential race where we finally figure out who the president is. How did COVID-19 affect you both personally and professionally, and how did you have to adjust to that?
Yeah. So interesting enough, and sometimes I feel bad, saying this, but COVID-19 professionally has really affected me in all good ways. But I'm going to say what my belief system is. I have the mindset that I am in the world, not of the world. So as the world is doing all this, I'm sturdy. I'm a sturdy elk. So, when you're of the world, everything the world does is like, ow, ow, oh, you just moved by what it does. And so for me, COVID, has really, really, my clientele has gone up. My speaking events have become more prone, and I have been doing them a lot more via Zoom, which gives me the leverage to save time and be able to hop off of my keynote speaking event and hop back on with the client. It's allowed me to show up as a community activist and leader more than I was before it. It has allowed the NAACP, myself and my other, presidents that I consider family, to be in conversations with LAPD Chief Moore, with the Sheriff Villanueva, with these different law enforcement entities of us. We're changing the way they train. We're hands-on in how they train. So all of that stuff as far as COVID. And again, I know people have been devastated by it. It has really catapulted and expanded everything Dr. Bryant. The personal side, I've had, cousin who tested positive for COVID. I've had a client who tested positive for COVID, both doing well now and healthy, thank God. We've had some close friends who are in the elected official political realm who have tested positive. So in that space, it's taken a bit of a toll. But for the most part, Dr. Bryant, myself, I've been able to stay really healthy, really happy, and really upbeat, which I'm going to do no matter what comes my way, because that is my mindset. And every day we manifest our mindset. We manifest who we are. And, my belief is so strong, Nick, that, here I go with the Bible again. There's a story about Job, and it's so short. It's the devil tells God, pretty much, I'm big and bad and I can take you down and blah, blah, blah. And God says, well, have you tried my servant Job? And the devil said, well, I can't touch him because you got him covered. You got him covered with barriers. And God said, okay. He said, well, hold on. Bloop, 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 bloop. Take your best shot. Take your best shot. And obviously, his best shot wasn't good enough. And so I use it as an analogy to how my mindset is with life. And when life brings things at me, I feel like God in that moment where I'm telling life, listen, you take your best shot. Take your best shot. Covered or not, you can't come in my space and create what you want in my space. This is my space. You can create whatever you want externally, but you can't come in here. You don't pay no bills in here. You're not allowed in here. And if I catch you in there, you got to go that quick. And so, again, I want to tell folks out there who have been affected by COVID, my empathy and my compassion and understanding, it really goes out to you, because this stuff is real. It is real. And whatever you're going through, the one thing that you got to make sure that you keep in a space of peace, regardless of what it feels like and what it looks like, is your mind and your belief system. And if you can just stick through it mentally and continue to tell yourself the truth, which is this too shall pass, and that, it's not what it looks like, it's what you will have it to be. Things shift in that way. And you will experience miracles all throughout your life and throughout the day, because a miracle is just a shift in perception. That's all it is. And if you can shift your perception to see that at which you need to see for it to be what you want it to be, nobody else, then you will have miracles all day long. All day long. And I'm telling you, this stuff is principle. I teach it, I do it, and it works. It really does.
Absolutely. I mean, you teach it, you live it, you go by it. I think it's something that's going to definitely enhance people. One question I want to ask you too, because I noticed you work with a lot of the police departments. You mentioned Michael Moore. You mentioned the sheriff's department, and we all know what they've done in the last year just against Black men and Black people. Have you gotten any pushback or resentment from that?
That's a good question. Interesting. I haven't really gotten pushback or resentment. I have had folks ask, why do you feel the need to work with him? Why have a relationship? And I always explain to people that it's just like, you can't ask somebody for something while you're flipping them off at the same time. That's just not going to work. If we are going to shift or change something that's in their department, We don't have to kiss their ass, excuse my language, and that's not what we are doing. Trust me, at all. They call me the boss mob for a reason, because they know when I'm in there, I respect them, but I'm coming with the heat, and I'm coming with transparency, and I'm coming with the realness of what's going on in these streets and what they need and how they do not know how to police us, and they do not know what community policing is, and they don't know what trauma and fear and anger looks on us. It looks different on us than it looks on someone else. I'm a Black woman. I'm passionate about the things that I speak about, the things that I feel, and it looks different when it comes out of my mouth than it does a woman who is Caucasian. And that's just the realness of what it is. And so sometimes me speaking or a Black man being passionate or angry, it can look like a threat to someone who's not culturally competent, who's not racially, culturally trained. And so my point is, I explain to people that, we're not locking hands with them so that we can be on their side and have these dialogues, because like I told Chief Moore when we were in our meeting, this is great for us to have this dialogue because I know it's needed as the beginning phases. We're not here to talk, and we're not here to dialogue anymore. That's been going on for years. This is why we are in the position we're in. We are here to implement change. We have calls of actions that we are going to provide you, and those actions we're going to wait for you to give feedback on, come into agreement, and implement those things.
What is next for the NAACP? Are you all doing anything as far as continuing to keep their names out there and keep your foot on the necks of these officers who deserve justice? I mean, the young man that was gunned down in Gardena was shot 5 times in the back, and the sheriffs took the evidence and took cameras to ensure that they wouldn't be found guilty of murder. What are the steps that the NAACP are doing in keeping that into the forefront as far as trying to acquire justice?
Absolutely. Again, we are not just on the phone or on Zoom or sending letters. We are at the table with Chief Moore. We were at the table with Sheriff Villanueva, putting out calls of actions. We are making sure that we are, again, I want to get this clear, because every Black organization is needed. They have a fundamental value to our community. Black Lives Matter, they're more of a protesting Black organization, which is freaking, we need them out there in the streets making noise, because they help us when we get to the table. Okay, NAACP, we're not so much of a protesting organization. We are the biggest, the oldest, and the baddest civil rights organization since 1909. Let's be clear. We're not a protesting, we are a civil rights, more of a take a legal approach. We're at the table. We want to implement change. And not that noise being made is not needed. We need noise on the street, because that noise coupled or married with us at the table demanding change, putting in written form calls of actions, writing up new legislation, which means if we write laws that help our community, that does more than if we sit up there and have a conversation. That is more than if we're just sitting around. And again, I put together an entire protest, so I'm not against it, but the legislation and laws that we can write are priceless, and it doesn't touch a needle to what protesting does. And it's noise, it brings awareness, and it helps us when we get to the table to say, you hear those people out there? You see those people ain't playing? You see how they're burned down this city behind this injustice? Well, you feel me? They're burning this city down. They out there, but we in here. So now they're listening to us because of the folks, all of these people around the world who are protesting, saying we're tired of it, we're not going for it. We are so grateful for them saying we're burning this thing down, while we sit at the table. NAACP presidents sit at the table and say, before they do that, implement this new training. Put in community programs into our community. Take that $100 billion, Mayor Garcetti, that you promised, and allocate that to our Black and brown communities. We don't need you to say it on media and say it on the news so that you sound good, because again, NAACP, we have been on the call, we have been in meetings, and we're still in meetings with Mayor Garcetti, our LA mayor, about what he's doing with his funds, where they're going to be allocated, because he has put aside $100 billion for the people that look like us in our community. We're happy that it's put aside. We need you to run us that money so we can run these programs and get things going. And these are the conversations that we're having on the call. But again, We have to be able to be respectful, because when you are doing business of any nature, because this is still a business regardless, you got to be able to sit at the table with folks and have an articulate conversation of what you need, your call of action, what that call of action is going to do, the impact of it, and what it costs. And then what they do is, because I'm being transparent, you know, with you and all of your listeners, is they respond to that. Everything is on documentation and through meetings, and saying, okay, we want to give you this amount. Okay, what are you going to do with this amount? How can we be involved? And we also have NAACP presidents and members who are now a part of the police commission, who are in these police commission meetings. So it's not just our voice. The concern that most people have, and that I don't like either, I'm with them too, Nick, is things take too long sometimes. We need justice yesterday, and we got to wait for it to come tomorrow. And I'm with them. I don't want to wait either. I get very, very eager when I'm in these meetings, and I'm going, and I'll say it, look, we have calls of actions. Can you or can you not? But then guess what? They have protocol. They have protocol where Chief Moore can't just say, he's verbally said yes, but he has to, on paper, say yes. So that we also have that as receipts to say, you promised us this. Because what happens is the Black community, the Black and brown, but most of the Black community has been promised so many things for so long, and the promises are not being kept. Okay. And so at this point, we cannot take a verbal promise. We need action, and we need to see impact, period. And so thus far, I can say they're on board with the conversation being done and the agreement of, we're on board with funding these programs. Now we're figuring out what programs, the cost, who's going to run them, where, the impact, what areas, what that looks like, and then so forth. But it's really huge. And just so one more piece, our branch just wrote a mental health diversion resolution. And
awesome.
It's awesome. And it got approved at the state level, and then it recently got approved at the national level. So again, that's legislation, that's a resolution, and it's a mental health diversion that says that every person, every Black person, human being that goes to a court of law is not only entitled, but has to, and the actual city or state pays for the mental health evaluation of that person. And this is the key right here, Nick, that evaluation is used for him, not against him in the court of law. Key thing is used for him, meaning if you're going to give this guy 5 years, then instead of giving him 5 years in prison where he sits there, he de-escalates, he becomes institutionalized, nothing comes out of it. He can't even be a productive citizen when he gets out. You're ripping him from his family. He has no money, all the stuff that goes with that. No, you're going to divert him to mental health treatment, which he needs any freaking ways. So for 5 years or 3 years, he gets a mental health treatment once a week, every day for his whole life. And that is his prison time. That is his parole, his probation. That is his second chance at freaking life. So we don't so much, if we do it that way, we don't so much need the prison reform, meaning post prison, when they get out of prison, let's try to rehabilitate them. Why? Why are we rehabilitating people after they get out of prison? They're already institutionalized. Now we're trying to intervene when a lot of times, if we want to be blunt, intervention is too damn late. We need the prevention of, no, before you slam them in there, and now he's screwed up, PTSD, depression, anxiety, adjustment disorder, the list goes on, okay? We're going to say we're divert you, young man. Go get you some treatment that you need anyways, because out of 13.3 million, 13.3% of the people in the United States of America are Black folks. 11% don't have health care. That means 11% of people don't even know what they have going on anyways, which we know there's something going on with everybody. So I say all that to say a mental health diversion is something that will change lives. It will save lives. It's going to save families. It's going to bring community back into our neighborhoods. It's going to grow Black families where that person gets to get treatment. And that will be something that becomes learned behavior and bleeds onto that Black family as to professional help works.
I want to get your thoughts really quickly on Ice Cube's contract with Black America. There's been a lot of talk. People have criticized him. People have said, well, hey, you didn't include, Black women. You didn't include Black LGBTQ. And and last time I thought black people were just black people. Like we pretty much can figure that out. So I just want to get your thoughts on that. And do you see anything coming from that as far as moving forward as we get into this new presidential regime?
Well, I think that Ice Cube's perspective is valid. Okay, let me not say I think what he was saying. The message that I received from him was that he came outside of the social construct of what he was told and what he was taught and what he was programmed to believe. Be a Democrat because you're black. Joe Biden said, "If you're not black, if you don't vote for me." You know, I voted for Biden, but I still think you can't tell me I'm not black or no one's not black for not voting for you. So his message was, hey, before you go and vote for one party or one person, how about do your research? Research what the Republican Party, the GOP stands for. What are their missions? What's the history of them? Really look at some of the Democratic, research of who was the one that supported slavery. Did Abraham Lincoln really, abolish slavery because it was in his heart? Or did he do it because he knew it was a financial move when he was president, which is really why he did it? So I believe Ice Cube was trying to say, hey, black people, listen, educate yourself. He's not saying he's voting for anybody yet at that time. He's already voted, but educate yourself and also, compare it to what you need in your household. What is your tax bracket? What do you and your wife and kids need to live the best quality of life, right? Those are the things that I think that the message he was sending. And because a lot of times, you got, people who read into things based on their own emotional stability and based on their own experience or lack of experience, and they can't hear correctly what someone's saying. And then you have folks who are just pessimists. No matter what somebody says, they're going to find some negativity in it. And you got to understand, Ice Cube has been in the game of living a good quality of life for a long time. He's been making a certain financial tax bracket for a while. So his mindset and his perspective on things is going to be a lot different from many folks in the black community, even though he looks like us. And that's just real. Same thing with 50 Cent. He made some comments too, even though we know he got all his screws. But I'm saying,
yeah, he 50 likes to troll.
He likes to troll. So, but with Cube, I actually was excited that the message I heard him say was, do your research. Please stop being the guinea pig. Stop being, the puppet. Oh, we're black, so we're supposed to do this. And, I'm here to say, I've had that experience of a lot of black folks. They just jump on the bandwagon to whatever we supposed to do as black people. And that's part of the problem. We as black people ain't supposed to do nothing as black people. We should, when it comes to elections and voting, we should be voting for what works for our household. That your right to vote is a right to vote based on what Dr. Bryant, my tax bracket, what laws and what legislation, what elected official, whether it's at the city level, the national level, the Senate, the House, the Congress, who is going to work best for my household. That's what voting is for. Then if you want to make mass change, you get out there and you write your own legislation for the mass population. Why don't you run for office? So for me, it's when it comes to voting, that's a personal right. And it's like choosing what you want to eat on the menu. I can't get mad at you if I don't like Mexican food, even though I love it, and you want to order a burrito. It's like, come on, dude, really? You got to order based on your appetite. Let me vote and order based on what I need. And as black people, we should be emotionally intelligent enough to allow you to be in the space you're in that I don't want to be in, and me be in the space you don't want to be in, but we can still break bread together. We can still respect each other. Why don't we find a commonality in another area? Why don't we find something else that we both like in a different area? We just know here we don't see eye to eye on it, and that's okay. We have to learn that in our community, that everybody doesn't have to swing the same way. We have the right to our own expression and opinion. And when you do your research, you come more into that as you learn and you get information on things. You start to form your own opinion, and it becomes very strong. And no one can knock you off of that opinion pedestal. And they shouldn't be able. You deserve that right. I mean, Ice Cube has made enough money. I'm sure he's paid enough taxes. If the man wants to say he's gonna end up being Republican, and and I'm a Democrat, why should that have any impact on me?
Exactly. I've always said Ice Cube has done so much. I mean, he's come up with the contract with Black America since the 90s. If you listen to anything in his music, he's always talked about that. So this is nothing new. He's said emphatically he's not choosing a side. It's just like, yo, this is a bipartisan issue that we have yet to attack and try to resolve. And so, I was on board with him. I still am on board with him. I think some things can be refined, of course, but hey, you're always going to refine something after the first time. That's just how things go.
Mm-hmm.
You know what, Dr. Bryant, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy woman. I know you have places to be and things to do. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out. Thank you for all that you do, all the great work that you do, not just physically, but mentally in our community to try to help heal our communities. I think that's a great thing. It does not get covered enough. And please let everyone know they can continue to keep up with you and with all your great work.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, thank you for having me on, and thank you for asking very fundamental questions that our community, needs information on, and understanding a lot of the stuff that is going on. And then obviously, acknowledging all the work that I do, that the NAACP does, the Dr. Bryant Foundation does. And then, just acknowledging that a lot of times the acknowledgement is something that we don't do it for, but it feels good to be celebrated and to have a pat on the back and say good job. I mean, again, we do it when we're kids, we do it, we expect it, but when we're adults, we forget the celebration is just as important as the hard work and the guts of it, right? So thank you for that. And folks, you can find me at drbryant.co. That's drbryant.co, not .com, .co. And on social media, Instagram, it's _. Dr. Bryant. That's _ Dr. Bryant. And then, Facebook is just Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. You can Google my book, Mental Detox is #1 on Google. It's also an ebook. Audiobook should be released around the first of the year. We're just waiting for everything to be approved and be done. And I have a new book, ABCs of Manifestation, coming out. And so just stay abreast and in tune for all that good stuff. And you guys, just stay safe and keep your mindset in a place of happiness, because you only have one job through this double pandemic, racial climate, and COVID-19. That's a double pandemic. And so let's lean into each other, have compassion, be easy on yourself so that you can be easy on others, because that caring and the easiness of it's you're going to be okay and we're going to be okay is really important. It's really important.
Now, will you be narrating the audiobook,
Mm-hmm.
or are you getting someone else to do it?
Yeah, I'm the narrator on the book. Yep, so it'll be my voice. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a pet peeve when people write books and don't narrate it. I'm like, come on, man. I got to hear your voice.
Right. You want to put the voice to the words in the book. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. But Nick, you're doing a great job, man. I mean, keep doing
Thank
it.
you.
Keep showing up. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So good job.
Well, hey,
Good
you know what?
stuff.
If you need some company on those private planes, just feel free to let me know. I'll clear my schedule just for you. I'll
Oh,
clear it just to get on the
you know
plane.
what?
Don't worry about it.
I do need company sometimes. You are more than welcome. Absolutely.
All
But
right.
only under one circumstance, you got to get your own roller bag with the Dr. Bryant face on there on your roller bag.
Done deal. It's nothing for that. That's nothing. That's nothing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Please be safe. And we'll definitely have you come back on the show once you release the new book sometime in the future.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
Thank you.